Hey everyone, it's Blair here. I'm back after a couple weeks. So it's good to talk to everyone. It's good to be back after a nice vacation. And we've got lots to cover as usual this weekend, starting with the Qs here. And I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on price than I do usually, because the more I look at these magic levels, the more I believe they are the single most important determinant of success in trading. As we look at the Qs here, we can see that since our last video was recorded, things have been going basically straight up. We thought there would be a bit of a pullback right around here, March 17th, 18th, 19th, and that, but that didn't happen. That's okay. We did have a bullish bias. We said 2 weeks ago that I think this is a kickoff to a new bull run and not just short covering, and that certainly turned out to be true. We finally got a bit of a pullback here in the latter half of last week, so we're pulling back to this magic level at 382 in the Qs. There is a probability of a pivot high here, April 1, that was for last Friday. That's obviously not going to happen because pivot highs need steep steep incline on either side of them, and instead we've got a steep decline here heading into this pivot high. So this will eventually disappear once the machine learning model digests the price and sees the price on the other side of this. Okay, so what do I mean by magic levels and price being really important? So first, a quick summary of what magic levels are. They're these orange and white lines here. The white lines are based on Fibonacci numbers, and the orange lines are based on Pythagorean relationships. And if we go and take a look at TradingView at an intraday level, you can see this a little bit better. So here is the Qs, and on the top pane here, we've got the magic levels, which are orange and white, and on the bottom pane, we've got the PPO indicator, and we've got our anchored VWAPs that are anchored to each of the purple cheat code lines here. And this is all done with the time trades indicator. The time trades indicator generates both the purple lines and the teal lines and the orange and the white horizontal lines. So if you look closely at price here, you can see something really interesting in terms of the behavior around the magic levels. How first, we've got a probe down here on February 23rd, and then a very sharp rebound back up, goes right through the 335 level, pauses, can't get through the 346 level, and it returns back down. And here we are back again at 322. Again, it bounces off 322, except this time, the lower magic level at 335 was defended. And back on March 14th, this is where I thought we'd get a deeper low, because this is like the third visit back down here. And instead it rebounded again. And now we can very easily determine the trend just by looking at the direction that price crosses the last magic level. So we've got one crossing here up, that's bullish. We've got, this is what I would call expected behavior around a magic level. Hits a magic level, loses some energy, drops back down, but recovers and regains that magic level and continues on to the next one, okay? So this is an upward crossing of a magic level. Crosses this magic level, loses some energy, comes back down and retests it, okay? And now we're good to go to the next one. We go up to the next one here, and we tag it up here on March 28th at 362, loses some energy and takes another run at it and succeeds, and we come back up to 371. So honestly, if you just trade in the direction of the last magic level cross, you will be so much ahead of most traders. And that is really, I think, the #1 strategy that I'm using right now in terms of my own personal trading, is to choose the direction based on the last magic level cross. And that doesn't mean I'm shorting this because this crossed back down, because we got halfway up, we lost some energy, we came back down to the prior magic level, and we're looking to regain some energy here. And if this crosses back up, then the bull move is back on. If, however, price were to really separate down, especially on a daily chart, back down below the 362 level, then I turn bearish. But for now, what I'm seeing is higher highs, higher lows, expected pullbacks right around magic levels, a series of 1, 2, 3, 4 positive crosses of magic levels. Yes, there was a little correction the last few days of last week, and that's to be expected after coming so far. But on the whole, the behavior is sticking to the pattern. It's sticking to the traditional behavior that we see around magic levels. And ultimately, I think this new bull run has a ways to go. The next big level that we would like to see tested is halfway here. So if you measure halfway between 362 and 403, that's roughly 20 points. So that'd be roughly here, 382. Halfway between magic levels also seems to be a very important level. So I'll be looking at that. And we can go back to time trades now and see what time trades is saying about the probabilities for the next few weeks. So looking at the Qs, again, Qs look relatively bullish. We've got a 85% probability of a pivot high on April 18th. And that's complemented by some low probability 1 standard deviation up moves. Now, keep in mind that I tend to discount a little bit in my head 1 standard deviation up moves because they tend to be the least accurate among all the forecasts. That's because they're the most common, okay? But it does provide some good data about, sort of where the balance of probabilities in terms of going up or going down is. So this combination of 1 standard deviation up moves heading into a pivot high on April 18th is definitely bullish, and it lends itself to this bullish interpretation that we see from price. So it looks like this is going to continue. And looking ahead, we don't see another pivot high until May 19th. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other indexes here. We've got spiders to look at. I'm just going to turn off GAN waves so things are a little bit clearer. So spiders has a similar pattern to the Qs, but everything is shifted back by about a week. We've got pivot high forecast April 11th and also April 25th. So there's also some 1 standard deviation down moves right here, but again, I tend to discount those a little bit. And in formulating my bias, I put more weight on these pivot highs because the data says that they're more accurate than the 1 standard deviation price moves. Okay, so that's spiders. Let's also take a look at the Dow. And when it comes to the Dow, again, we've got a big pivot high coming up April 25th, and that is combined with some 1 standard deviation up moves that week as well. So again, this looks bullish in general on the Dow. What do we see in IWM? IWM is not showing any pivots, but it is showing a nice cluster of 1 standard deviation up moves here. So I'd be bullish on IWM using May expiries if you're trading options like me, just to make sure that you can take advantage of this nice cluster of high probability 1 standard deviation moves up. Let's take a look at bonds here because, of course, interest rates are very critical at this moment with what the Fed is doing and all the forecast Fed funds increases for the rest of the year. So bonds, of course, has come down huge. This is the 20-year Treasury bond ETF, TLT. So they've come down huge from 150 to under 130 and are bouncing a little bit right here. It looks like there may be another push down here in bonds, anticipating higher long-term rates with a pivot low around April 14th, complemented by 1 standard deviation down move up here, April 13th. And then after that, we've got a pivot high on April 25th, combined with more down moves into early May. But then after May 10th, the forecast is for a nice cluster of up moves in bonds for the rest of May. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now let's take a look at IEF. IEF is the 7 to 10-year Treasury bond, and we've got some really clear signals on this, which I really like. So this is showing a bit of a recovery in bond prices, implying shorter-term rates coming down through April 13th with a pivot high up here, April 18th. And then there's another wave down in bond prices, implying yields going up through early May. And then we've got a similar but lower probability increase in bond prices in the second half of May. All right, so that's interesting, and it does also, this chart in particular does sort of lend itself to a bullish outlook for the next couple of weeks in April. So we're looking at April 4th through April 14th. So that's about the next 2 weeks here of 7 to 10-year bond prices increasing, implying interest rates in that range coming down. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is also take a look at the major stocks that make up the Qs to try and get a little bit more confirmation of our outlook. And here's Apple. Apple's looking pretty bullish as well, with a lot of 1 standard deviation up moves here. There is a pivot low, and when there's a pivot low sort of in the middle of a bunch of up moves, it does indicate a little bit of a choppy move or a sideways move into that. So, but then after that pivot low, we can see the probabilities increasing here. So things in general are looking a little bit more bullish for tech through April. Let's take a look at Amazon. Okay, and when it comes to Amazon, what we're seeing here is, I guess my eye is drawn immediately to this big outlier of a 2 standard deviation up move, 61% on April 25th. There's a cluster of very low probability 1 standard deviation down days, but this up move looks like it's surging right into a cluster of pivot highs here. Peaking on April 29th. Again, looking generally pretty bullish. I would give this a bullish bias on Amazon, even though the probabilities could be a little bit clearer. What is shown here is still on the bullish side. Okay, Google. Okay, so Google, we've got some pivot highs here around April 11th and April 20th, and those are bracketing a big 66% probability of a 1 standard deviation move up, and very little down pressure seen here. So again, I give this a bullish bias. Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft, again, the dominant feature is very high probability pivot highs, and these tend to act as magnets, and we can expect price to be pulled up into these pivot highs around April 19th and also April 28th. Again, more bullishness. Let's take a quick look at Facebook. Facebook has a few pivot lows here through April 8th, but after that, there is a very big cluster of 1 standard deviation up days. So, and this extends through all of May into early June. So that is a very interesting pattern here. I'd be looking to trade this long. But of course, taking profits along the way, because there's going to be, of course, lots of pullbacks right around here, May 5th. This is a common pattern in a lot of stocks that I'm seeing is a pivot high in early May. So you know, this it all depends on your time frame, of course, and your trading style and risk tolerance. But as an options trader, this would be interesting for calls, taking profits along the way. And let's take a quick look at Tesla. Tesla has a nice ramp up of 1 standard deviation up days. I really like this pattern here. There is a pivot high for April 12th, so there may be a pause around there or even a pullback, but it looks like this very sharp ramp up after this little pause here is expected to continue by the time trades probabilities into at least April 12th or so, and maybe even later in the run up into earnings. Just keep in mind, again, there's a big pivot low here on May 9th. So if you're long Tesla, I wouldn't want to be holding it too far past, you know, this April 19th with this very high probability of an up day, as these declining probabilities of an up day often correlate with down days in price heading into this big pivot low. Okay, let's take a look at crypto, starting with Bitcoin. Now, the Bitcoin forecast is really quite empty, to be honest. Sometimes this happens where the forecast can go a little bit quiet, and that's what we're seeing right now. So we aren't able to draw much of any conclusions right here from Bitcoin, other than just by looking at price and observing that price has regained multiple magic levels here in a row. And it's right now at roughly the highest price since January, since very early January. So certainly price is telling us a bullish story on Bitcoin. The other thing I've noticed is that prior to some 1 standard deviation down days like we see here in mid-April, there's often a push up just to kind of set up this correction. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a push up into April 12th or 13th to sort of set up a little mini correction here for a few days. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum has a very bullish forecast. We've got a pivot high here April 4th, but a pivot high is really about a steep incline going up into the pivot and a steep decline coming after the pivot. However, that is contradicted by the probabilities of an up move down here, April 4th through 8th. So there's a few cross currents in this forecast. Again, I defer to price, and what we're seeing, of course, is very strong here. We're coming up into this white magic level at 35.80. And if price can sort of regain that key magic level, that sort of opens up a whole new range here for Ethereum, and I'd be pretty bullish on this because we can see here how after it gained the 35.80 level back in October, pushed up about halfway to 4,700, ran out of energy here, came back down, retested the magic level at 2160, and has spent some time in here regaining some energy, and now it's ready to re-enter this range of magic level white bands between 3,500 and all the way up to 5,800. So given the strong cluster of 1 standard deviation up days here, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ethereum take out this 5750 magic level up here sometime in May or even June with one of these clusters of forecast up moves. So very bullish forecast right now from Ethereum. There's lots of other bullish forecasts in the world of crypto. I'm just going to show you a couple. Digibyte, the long overlooked coin here, has a very nice cluster of 2 standard deviation up moves coming up in the next 2 weeks. So I'd put that on your watch list. And of course, Luna has had a hell of a run. We've been calling that for the last couple of weeks. And it looks like after a little bit of a pause here for about a week or so, starting in mid-April, we see another cluster of up days from roughly April 13th through to about April 27th or so. But looking ahead, we can still see a massive cluster of 2 standard deviation up days for Luna in July. So the main event is still to come for Luna. Okay, and we're going to wrap things up with a look at a few Indian stocks. And I want to show you guys the models page here and how I find these. And I think this is probably one of the most powerful features of time trades. I'll just walk through this. So let's pretend I'm an investor in Indian stocks. So I can type in India here in the filter bar. It filters by exchange, and I can sort by any one of these future probabilities. So if I've got a bullish bias, I can search for stocks that have the highest mean up move forecast for the next 15 trading days, okay? And we can see the top 3 here: Tata Consumer, or Tata Global Beverages, Adani Enterprises, and Info Edge. So let's take a look at these one by one and see what these look like. Tata Consumer, so yes, you can see there's a massive cluster of 1 standard deviation up days, but there is also a pivot low here around April 7th, April 8th. But these are heading up into a pivot high and multiple pivot highs, April, May, and May 12th. So this is definitely a great long here to consider adding to. So if we go back, we can check out Adani Enterprises. And again, just like the models page says, there's a nice cluster of 1 standard deviation up days here, another great long. It's had a nice breakout here from the 1908 level, and it looks like it's got more to run, including some very nice 2 standard deviation up days over here in May. So even though it's broken out, even though it's at a relatively high price compared to the recent past, it's still worth adding here. And finally, let's take a look at Info Edge. And Info Edge has some 1 standard deviation up days here for this week. Those back off and we see a pivot low April 12th. But then there's some more 1 standard deviation up days heading into a pivot high. So again, this one looks like it's kind of basing a little bit. There may be a breakout. I'd look to add after April 12th and this forecast pivot low is out of the way. And then we can take advantage of this upwards ramp in 1 standard deviation up moves, and hopefully we can get back up to the 5780 level where this last breakdown started. Okay, and that's it for me. I hope you all are having a great weekend, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Thank you.